Okay, good evening, Detroit. So I watch women in sports. I watched the UConn women's basketball team win a 4th consecutive NCAA championship with cold-blooded efficiency. And after the game, I asked a player, what does it take to go 37-0? And she replied, never apologize for being great. In 2015, I crisscrossed Canada and was among the 1.3 million World Cup spectators. It was there that I learned for nations beyond the United States the challenges that girls' participation in football that they face. It often begins at birth. It's hard to succeed when you're no one's priority. And I watch women in action sports because girls and women who shred are fearless renegades that are crushing gender stereotypes bit by bit. And I've sat on the edge of my seat, soaking up the wisdom of legendary tennis player Billie Jean King explain that over the course of a woman's lifespan, she will leave roughly $500,000 on the table just by failing to negotiate her salary. So like many women in the sports industry, my journey started as an athlete. And I had serious hoop dreams. By 2000, I was a senior at the University of Minnesota, and after 3 seasons as a student manager, my dream of becoming a full-fledged student athlete had finally come true. But as my last Big Ten season ended, I realized that I wasn't ready to say goodbye to a game that taught me how to believe in myself when others doubted what I could achieve. So I used my 20-something-year-old logic, because when you're 20, you know, everything can happen, and I decided that I would become the owner of a professional sports team because it was simple, just be the one in charge. So fast forward about a decade, and I looked up one day, and I wasn't anywhere near the sports industry. I had shelved my dreams, and the closest contact that I had with the professional sports owner was watching championship ceremonies on TV. So I reinvigorated my passion, and I applied for job after job, and I got rejection letter after rejection letter. And so I took matters into my own hands, and I started a sports blog. And about a year later, I took a huge leap, and I joined the Forbes SportsMoney digital team as an online contributor. So it was 2011, and that summer I attended my first event as a member of the media, the WNBA All-Star Game. I was in heaven. I was with the world's best women's basketball players. I had up-close and personal interviews with women like Lisa Leslie, the first to dunk in the WNBA, and Diana Taurasi, the league's all-time leading scorer and the greatest of all time. And what I was surprised to see, that major news outlets were not covering the game. So the next year was the 40th anniversary of Title IX and the 2012 Summer Olympics. So as you can imagine, women in sports coverage exploded. Americans championed the fact that the first time in Olympic history, more women than men were participating in the games. We saw women in primetime television, and corporate sponsors, of course, were pushing female athletes to the forefront. But in 2013, I saw a dramatic drop. So the same women who were championed for winning consecutive gold medals were now being told that their professional basketball league did not measure up to the men's league and that it wouldn't survive. And the same women who garnered 25 million record-smashing viewers of the World Cup finals were now struggling to capture attendance for their National Women's Soccer League. So the only difference between the every 4 years athlete and the everyday athlete is the uniform on a woman's back. Women make up 51% of the US population, 40% of all athletes, collegiate, professional, and Olympic, but only receive 4% of sports media coverage. This year, the Women's Media Center found that 88.6% of sports stories are produced by men, and 11.4% are produced by women. So sports writing was only meant to be my temporary outlet until I found that coveted industry job. But sometimes you find your purpose when you're not even looking. So I watch women's sports, and I write about women's sports because I believe that girls and women deserve a platform where their voices are heard and they are seen in their true diversity. If we change the messenger, we will change the message. So the good news is that as fans, we can do better. We can consume women's sports. We can recognize that there's economic and societal power behind advancing women and girls. And so what does that look like? That looks like buying tickets, season tickets. That looks like attending games. And that also looks like clicking on legitimate stories that advance athleticism and not sexism. So this is the network effect. The more fans that join the Women in Sports network, the more valuable the network becomes to people, athletes, who are already in the network. So every now and then, someone will ask me if I still want to be a professional sports owner, and the answer is yes. But now it is for very different reasons. Now I want to see women in prominent roles. I want women treated equally and paid equally in professional sports. And I believe that that can happen in this city, right here in Detroit. Now, Detroit, I don't have to remind you about who you are and what you're capable of, but I will remind you of the moments when you've championed women in sports. In 2015, you hosted the World Cup champions in the We Believe Tour at Ford Field. Last winter, after staging an historic equal pay boycott, you welcomed the U.S. women's national hockey team to Southeast Michigan. And in 2006, you filled Joe Louis Arena to the brim and cheered on the Detroit Shock as they won a WNBA championship. Yes. So Detroit, we can create a conversation for investing in women's sports and for all women and girls to be seen in their true athletic giftedness. Thank you.